The X-tinction Agenda, comics of the 80s, 90s, and more.
X-tinction Agenda, Episode 5.
Returns.
Something I like to call Deadly Ditko.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Yeah. So I watched the Picard trailer in full.
Oh, you want to go there? Okay.
Well, we should talk a little bit about the Picard trailer. It's
touch on
the
that.
New York Comics Con. Yeah,
it's big trailer, biggest trailer of today. If that dates us, that's whatever. I mean.
Yeah, it's the biggest trailer of today, and I don't know what to do with that, man. Like the previous trailers made it look like Old Man Logan with Captain Picard.
Right.
So,
yes.
Old man finds the little girl hiding. Turns out the little girl can kick people's asses, and
assembles
he's
himself like a loser team, and solves the problem. Gets his own ship.
And that Borg chick from Star Trek Voyager shows up.
Who doesn't like her?
Yeah. I don't even know her, man. I stopped watching Voyager. That was garbage.
She's a fan classic, though. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, she's a busty lady who's half robot. You know, for a certain segment of our population, that's a thing.
It's a win.
Yeah. So, but this new trailer, I don't know what to make of it anymore. Like, I know that it sucks.
No, I don't. I disagree. You didn't even get the tiniest little fucking hair on the back of your neck, a little semi, when you saw Commander Data and Will Riker.
Definitely not when I saw Will Riker. Jonathan Frakes is not someone. That guy's in my rear view mirror. You know, I'm driving away from him.
No, I got excited.
Brett Spiner, on the other hand, me and Brett Spiner, we're friends, and I love a good Commander Data.
Me too.
Yeah,
I was really excited, and
I can see, man.
I see potential.
I see one season. No, the way that fucking fandom works, it's probably going to be a hot ticket for a while. But I don't know. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not keen on it. I don't understand its purpose, and it's a consistent. The Federation is over time, and I don't want to idolize the Federation because there's we should talk about Star Trek in one of our episodes. We should have a Star Trek episode.
We can do a Star Trek comic, and then we can get right into the ideology and
all that stuff. You know, because it's basically like, what if the UN was in space? You know, like it's kind of not its earliest mandate, but you know, early, definitely the first season of Next Generation.
My father, who will be known from time to time as Big Jer, is currently rewatching every single episode of Star Trek Enterprise as we speak.
Wow.
Yeah, he doesn't give a shit. He loves it.
What I wanted to say is that, because we should move on, but what I wanted to say is that, like, there was some sort of ideological core, which was gross, and it, I don't know, there was some deep darkness in there. But what the Star Trek franchise has done over time is explored that darkness, but to the detriment of any sort of I don't know, positive ideology. So it's all just darkness. Like, it's just basically they're going the Frank Miller route. They're going grim and gritty with it, and they haven't found their way back yet. They've moved to comedy from time to time in the Star Trek movies, and then in Picard and whatnot. All I see is just sort of 80s cynicism being presented again, and you know, I don't know when they're going to have their Kingdom Come moment. I don't know.
Well, I think you just need to calm your mind and just let Patrick Stewart come before you.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'll probably I'll zoom in on that first episode and get, you know, I don't want to
hone in on what you're trying to bring to the table.
So to the main event. Now I'm stalling for time by talking about Captain Picard with you right now today, because we're going to be talking about X-Men Deadly Genesis.
Yes.
And
Patrick
Brubaker
Stewart also is the first incarnation of Professor Xavier, which somehow ties it into this.
Okay, there we go. That would have been a good segue. I probably should have thought of that.
Yeah, we'll put it. Yeah, it's good here.
All right, just imagine Good segue.
Imagine we
Death
led
Genesis. Okay, we got the Ed Brubaker. We got the Trevor, I don't know, Hairsine, with Scott Hanna on the art duties with covers, glorious covers by Mark Silvestri.
Yes, the covers made the book.
Yeah. Spoilers. That's the most positive thing we can say.
Yeah, I thought it had a great introduction. Introduced a space massacre with like corpses, awesome, and a mystery character. And I thought, wow, you know what? This isn't gonna suck. And then it started to suck. The Sentinels are watching over them. Government surveillance. That's kind of neat. Kind of a different look at them from the school. Just being surveilled or whatever. And the introduction of the term Omega Plus level mutant, which fucking means nothing to anyone and didn't in that book either.
No, because he doesn't come okay, so I guess we'll slow down. That first issue, where that was actually pretty strong. I liked that first issue a lot, and I had similar optimism. Even knowing everything I knew, because I kind of knew how it was going to end and what the big reveal was and all that stuff. But I liked the build up to it. But at the same time, I was really disappointed with I don't know what I want to characterization. I thought Cyclops was really thunderly. I don't know what to call him. Wolverine was way too easily impressed.
He did make a Toronto Maple Leafs joke.
There was a Maple Leafs reference. That's right, because he's Canadian.
Yeah, he made a hockey joke.
Yeah, the whole thing made me question whether or not Ed Brubaker's a good writer.
He just discarded the X-Men in their entirety and just left them as kind of like, everyone knows who the X-Men are. I'll just write the shallowest version of them and just have them be kind of like side characters in my ridiculous tale.
Yeah, and I read Joss Whedon's Gifted, the X-Men Gifted, like Volume 1. I read those 6 issues the other day. And I kind of wish we had read them before we talked about this, because I can see, so I guess we'll kind of get to it later, but what's interesting to me is it opens up with a real, there's that space mystery, there's this, that energy wave going out from we're post House of M. There's been the proclamation by Wanda Maximoff of no more mutants. And so a bunch of mutants have been depowered. There's only like 98 mutants in existence any longer, or 198, I forget the number. And that energy that's been released is waving out, and it awakens, this mystery Omega Plus person.
Right.
And then meanwhile, you got your mystery brewing, but just after that, we're treated to a big heap and hope full of nostalgia. With Kurt Wagner looking at the old picture of the team, and we're really the whole thing's trying to look back, and everything about this is looking back and altering the past, and there's nothing about the future in it. And I thought it's just really it's very bleak and bland.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't know, there was the shuttle crash, and the team was like easily outclassed the government. Emma nearly gets cooked by whatever Cerebro, and then there's just like a cheesy dispatch of Cyclops and Wolverine when they get to the crash site. They get spanked by this like mystery guy. And
I like how Wolverine gets it in that one. That made him feel dangerous. Although getting the bad guy to beat Wolverine up is pretty much how you show that someone's dangerous, and it makes Wolverine. I don't know. What do we want to? It makes him shitty. He's supposed to be super dangerous. He's supposed to be the guy that you can't beat, and then you get it. That whole action sequence was that was fine.
Yeah, you feel like that added some like severity to the villain or whatever. You're all right.
Yeah. And then, and then the U.S. government shows up, and then at that point, I don't know what this fucking book does or is. It's just like it was in a holding pattern for 5 issues after that until.
Well, they go into
the
like the pervy videotape. Charles Xavier is a total and utter bastard. Okay.
Yeah.
What the fuck? He killed babies. He's killed children. And then Beast and fucking, of course, I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna drop this on the fucking X-tinction agenda people or whatever. That Kurt Wagner is fucking ridiculous. He is the dumbest X-Man. It's intolerable that you can even try to squeeze a personality out of that ridiculous shit. I got nothing for it.
Right.
Anyway,
I think if you read earlier Claremont, I think he's got a lot of personality. It's just very few people have been able to bring it out other than Chris Claremont himself.
They can't flesh it out because it's fucking dumb, dude. Okay.
I don't know, man. He was never my favorite, and I only at this point sort of find him charming. But I can see why, knowing the range of works that you've been exposed to that star or involve Nightcrawler, I can understand your position. But
yeah, I guess maybe he probably is. He's got to have some magic moments somewhere in there.
Yeah, he's a fan favorite. People love that guy. Not me, but no. Yeah, he's whatever. He's a fun-loving swashbuckler, and to a certain group of people, then that's good stuff. But
wow.
Yeah.
So then enter the complete throwaway team. I'm gonna list them. Do you like that? You ready?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm very excited. Our listeners are excited as well.
Sway, some girl that has time control. Petra, who controls georocks. Darwin, the alien-looking evolving boy, and Vulcan, the leader. And he, spoiler, becomes the mystery Omega-level mutant. But these characters make this bizarro throwaway team, and each of them get a real long, flushed-out introduction story that fucking is so unnecessary. It's outrageous. But yeah,
because they're essentially they're murdered people, and that's all they're ever going to exist as, except for Vulcan, I suppose. And I don't know what happens with that Darwin guy.
I really hope, Vulcan, how these are even allowed creative ideas in the Marvel universe. I would have been like, what the fuck, man? Do me a favor, if you're gonna write this story, kill them all.
I think actually, it's kind of what Brian Michael Bendis is going to do later when he takes over the book. He's going to try and create new characters, and they're all going to be equally. I don't know. There's just unremarkable, and uninteresting. Or derivative, I don't know, man. All the powers have been done. I don't care about your girl that can control rocks.
What? Yeah, it didn't the most interesting person in the whole group was the Asian girl whose parents were killed by triads in a New York Chinatown gun mistake or whatever.
That was the Sway story, right?
Yeah, that was a hit.
Yeah.
They came in with a hit crew and they mistakenly shot up her parents in a hit and run, and her skills, her particular mutant powers, were able to freeze time and save herself, and then get the people arrested at a later date. But that was actually the only kind of neat moment for any of those people.
Yeah, and I kind of skipped it, and the art was bland. And can we Pete Wood, I think, is the artist on those, and that cartoony style, I'm not interested. It's not appropriate for the X-Men.
It wasn't good.
And these pencils by Trevor Hairsine were pencils. I mean, like they were layouts and they were finished by the inker. And you could tell it was just a phoned in event. Like, and I feel that I know Ed was trying to do something real clever with this whole retcon thing, which we still haven't talked about. I could tell he was really pumping it out. Like this was a thing he really wanted to do, and I don't understand why.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
Why did Professor Xavier lose his powers? Because
that's the No More Mutants thing. Because you didn't read, and neither did I, for that matter, that whole House of M thing, the No More Mutants. He was one of the mutants that ended up depowered. So that's why he has no powers.
Well, that was dumb.
Yeah, the whole thing's silly. Like, it's such a bad time for the X-Men. And like really anything up until, I don't know, this year has been a bad time for the X-Men. They really, post-Morrison, they did not improve on what he was doing. But I think that's something that we can talk about when we get to Joss Whedon, because he took over right after and kind of set the pace or the tone for everything that's going to come later.
I remember he at least set the tone for, like, he at least set a unique tone that made you feel like you were getting like a re-envisioned X-Men. And this didn't give me that at all. It was just it was like somebody was trying to tell their own story with their own cool ideas that just was done. It almost felt like fan fiction. And also the whole entire team was killed by fucking swamp monsters, like Swamp Thing knockoffs that had no personality, and Krakoa. Right, the stupid nameless bad guys with no agenda, I wrote here in my notes.
Well, okay, and so that is, he's spoilers. I don't know why we keep saying fucking spoilers. This comic was produced in 2006. As everyone knows, this story plays games with Giant Size X-Men #1. Now, in Giant Size X-Men #1, the original X-Men are captured. Cyclops manages to escape. He comes back to the Professor. The Professor's like, I'll gather new mutants and we'll go save the other X-Men from Krakoa. And then they go back and they save the other X-Men. What this story argues or posits, presupposes, was, what if they weren't the first team that tried to go save them? And what if the first team that tried to go save them was a suicide mission? And then Professor X covered it up. And so there's this whole secret history and false memories.
Which was probably the one good or clever idea about the entire story, which could have been told on a page.
And so, yes, but and on the other hand, no. Because it completely... Professor X is now, like, he's always been evil to a large extent, and I keep alluding to Joss Whedon's run, but Joss Whedon did something and showed the Professor X to be super evil as well, and this just turns him into something that they absolutely have to get rid of, and at the end, Cyclops says you can't stay any longer, but it invalidates the entire moral core of the X-Men, and it, like, finally and completely, without question, turns Professor X into just a fucking villain. And to that extent, I don't understand why Brubaker would make that choice. Whether he was asked to.
You weren't able to empathize with him. He was weakened and without power, and he just seemed like an absolute monster. Like you felt maybe even trivialized by like anything Magneto would do, compared to someone like sending a rescue team, having everyone die, and manipulating people's memories of ever even meeting them. That's disgusting.
In everyone's memory, and like
every single person on the team without any moral compass at all. Just, I have this power. No one needs to really get past.
Yeah, Cyclops, your brother was one of the dead people. It's just so fucking. It's such a poor choice, and I don't understand. Like, the story doesn't bear out, doesn't provide any reason for this to happen, other than
not to like my other issue
later on.
Too.
Oh, go
sorry.
on.
My other issue too is that you probably could have used an existing X-Man character or a lesser known character to kind of tell this story, and he didn't make that choice. He made a cockamamie dude, Gabriel the Vulcan, with a ridiculous zero backstory, and he was idiotically overpowered to just like recklessly be like, well, I'll show you what Professor Xavier did, like a gigantic baby.
Yes.
Roasting humans alive and acting like a complete tool. It was like not even any. It was hard to even make sense of it. And oh god, it was. I don't know. It was just so dumb that he used his own homemade, homegrown idea, and I'm sure in his own mind, once he like pushed out this grotesque baby of a fucking idea, he thought to himself, Vulcan will live on forever as an.
It's interesting that you say that. It's because he does. He for the next
make me sad
for 12 issues, because like if we couldn't have gotten a hold of this, one other option we could have read was a 12-issue run in Uncanny X-Men called The Rise and Fall of the Shi'ar Empire, because at the end of the series, Vulcan's flying off. It looks like he's going to go get his revenge on the Shi'ar Empire, and he goes off and he conquers them completely and becomes their emperor.
That's absurd.
And plays heavily in sort of cosmic stories for, I guess, the next 4 or 5 years, I guess. I don't know. I never read any of them.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
So hollow. Why don't we just send fucking the Kool-Aid Man out there to do that? He has more personality and backstory.
He busts through just as many walls.
Bam! Fuck.
Yeah.
God.
So Deadly Genesis, indeed. It's fucking stupid. Now, funny story. The original Giant Size X-Men #1, it is also entitled Deadly Genesis. So there's, he's being super clever. And
it was intolerable to even conceive of Gabriel as being the villain. It didn't even make any sense. It didn't make sense that he roasted a human alive Sentinel pilot for no reason. It didn't. Also, sorry, I'm gonna go dip a little bit back.
Sure.
Did Ed Brubaker just decide to give Emma an origin story as a peeler? Also.
No, that's a difficult question. My understanding is that there is precedent in stories for her to
be a stripper.
Yeah, I think so. Engaged in high-class escort work, that sort of thing.
So she's a stripper for the Hellfire Club, and that was.
And then she worked her way to becoming a member of the Hellfire Club, and she's kind of a.
If that was her origin story, Ed really tore it down to its base function.
He did, and that's what this whole.
It was awful.
That's what this whole book does.
Why would you devalue her like that? Just for no reason. That didn't. You could rip that page right out of the book, and it wouldn't make a difference. It's like
that's true.
Fuck.
As a matter of fact, I thought it was and this is nerd talk, but how in the world can Professor X erase the memory of Emma Frost, who is also herself a powerful telepath?
Dangerous and powerful telepath.
Yeah. And I know that's a stupid nerd complaint, but I was like, and even that's not realistic. It's just so dumb.
It was bad.
Yeah. And then
they showed that Xavier, before he lost his powers, was ascending though to some kind of really high power level where he was able to train people at high
Oh fuck yeah, there's things to say about that. That's so I don't know what to do with that either, because that's never, I don't believe that's possible. And again, this is a nerd complaint as well, but you put people in their own brain and you make them imagine that they're doing a bunch of stuff. So you're basically telling people to dream. Now, you can dream as much as you want about being a world-class basketball player, but when you wake up, you're not a world-class basketball player. So what's the mechanism here? How is he possibly training people through dreams?
If you train them through dreams for 2 weeks, their bodies would atrophy, and they would wake up weaker than ever.
Yeah. And like maybe some neural pathways would open or something like that. And he's a powerful telepath, I guess.
I
but
guess there's maybe some precedent for them to have their powers be unlocked more or something. I don't know.
Well, I guess okay, look, here we'll fucking give it a no prize. So we've seen in the past that the professor's been able to implant languages into people's minds, the capacity, and also we remember when Jean Grey stole the knowledge of how to pilot a spaceship from Peter Corbeau.
Right.
So it's possible to Matrix style upload certain skills into the mind, but these things are usually cognitive skills, like how-to knowledge, but not like giving someone, like kung fu. I guess that would be the difference between being able to pilot the helicopter and being able to suddenly kung fu. And
Hence why they all died by swampies. Worthless.
Yeah,
deaths.
why the? Yeah, I guess to that extent it makes sense because maybe he was just delusional about what he was doing.
Which really, to me, makes him even more dangerous and
and unhinged. And it's silly. Like why? And if he was able to do that, why did he ever have a danger room in the first place? Why doesn't he just put the X-Men into this virtual? And maybe that's what the danger room is. And it's all a fucking dream. You can't trust your own memories anymore, Professor X. Blah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's fucking. I was really like I didn't think I was gonna like this book. I didn't think that I was gonna actively dislike this book. Okay, so here's a perfect example of how fucking bland this story is. The X-Men jet flies into another airplane. Hundreds are killed. The federal government shows up. They're getting in Emma's face. The army's blah, blah, blah. And how they're diffused? They're diffused because Kitty Pryde wrote a report. She wrote a report saying that the jet was stolen. And then they're like, oh, paperwork's in order. And then they leave.
That's right. So they can, their jet, which if the government was surveilling them in any way, shouldn't have any access to at all.
Yes.
Their jet was stolen,
stealth jet,
and they reported it like as if their Prius was stolen from a mall parking lot, and that got them off the hook for a horrific terrorist act involving hundreds of American citizens.
Yeah, which would change the landscape of America,
the free world.
Yeah, to the whole thing. And if you're gonna make it that nuts and bolts federal government red tape, then and you're gonna make everything so down to earth and well, down to earth is perhaps the wrong term, but if you're going to just go that route and take that tone, then do something interesting with it. But it's like every instinct of his in this story is to do either the most atrocious thing for the characters, the most bland thing imaginable, or do nothing. Just spin your wheels for so long.
It was so bad. It made Ultimate X-Men seem like a really flushed out book.
I would love to read Ultimate X-Men after having read this. I was like Mark Miller, man, because at least his action scenes are interesting.
I know, and at least he had some like hot direction for the villain, and like funny. A plan that maybe was going to go past one trade paperback, Yeah. He wasn't trying to shove new characters down our throats.
Yeah. So at this time, it's worth noting. It's worth noting that at this time, so Brubaker, he starts as a crime writer, and I think that says a lot. He worked exclusively for DC in the early 2000s. He did Catwoman, Gotham Central, Sleeper. So he's doing a lot of like boots on the ground, cat burglar, police officers, spies. He's at this point he started writing Captain America, and it really took off. And I liked his Captain America run, and reading this made me think that maybe I don't like his Captain America run. Maybe he's trash. He wrote
maybe he's just got a deeper passion for different characters too,
and different types of stories. I just think the types of stories that he has an affinity for, they don't work with the X-Men, and yeah. But he's going to later do Daredevil. He's going to do Iron Fist with Matt Fraction, and he after this is going to win Best Writer 2 years in a row. He's going to win the Eisner for Best Writer 2 years in a row, 2007, 2008.
If you did this type of story with a twist and a psychological edge and in a throwaway team that was killed, and you used like just crooks at the ground level, or something like that, it might actually be clever. I don't know. We'll never know.
Yeah, because it's done, man. It's done. So I was thinking. Well, actually, no, I don't know. Do we really have anything more to say about this?
I'm comfortable moving straight to Spider-Man.
Well, I want to offer a redemptive reading of Deadly Genesis. I want to absolve Ed Brubaker of responsibility for this shitty story, and I think it can be done, but it's going to take some gymnastics.
Okay, we're gonna have to find a Brubaker book sometime down the line that's just fucking game-changingly good.
Which apparently they're around there. They're around. He's constantly winning awards. People speak very highly. I loved his Captain America run. I liked his Daredevil work. It was fine. He's good.
Okay.
So I don't think this story is his fault. I think that. But in order to explain myself, we're going to have to look closely at how the retcon of Deadly Genesis works. So what is its purpose? What are the elements? What are the effects? So, why do you do a retcon? Why do you engage in retroactive continuity? So you do it to accommodate sequels sometimes. You do it to correct an error. Sometimes you'll do it to recontextualize past events. And sometimes you'll do it to increase creative freedom. Now, I think this story recontextualizes the past, but it does so in a way that limits creative freedom. It does so in a way that only makes future attempts at telling X-Men stories poorer as a result.
Wow.
And it does this, as we've already talked about, through false memories and through a secret history. And it draws upon some narrative elements that make a little sense. So between 1970 and 1975, no X-Men comics were published. There were only reissues. So there was a publishing gap between Uncanny X-Men 66, and then there was the Giant Size X-Men #1, Deadly Genesis, 1975. So that's one element that this is built out of, that gap in publishing, where theoretically there could have been these other characters doing things. And then there's Mr. Sinister's words to Scott about his multiple brothers in X-Men Volume 2, number 23, 1993. So this is an offhand comment in 1993, and the mystery of the third Summers brother that Ed Brubaker decides to solve in this manner.
That's not a good way to solve it.
No, it's not a good. Well, the others. One day we'll talk. The other solutions weren't any better. Gambit was a proposed option for a while. Then there's Professor X's mental power and its potential for abuse. And then the fact that Professor X faked his own death for 23 issues between issue 42 and issue 65. So just before the book was canceled, Professor X came back to life and revealed that he had lied to everyone and concealed a big secret because he was gaining power to beat a big enemy. So everyone had to think he was dead because it was for their own good. So there was some moral grayness at that point. And then of course there's the House of M. This no more mutants, this mutant wave that flows out at the very it's the very first panel. And so why do I think that the Deadly Genesis takes its particular form, and why answer the Summers brother mystery? Why further delegitimize Professor X's moral stature? Why take away Krakoa's intelligence and agency? Because previously the island controlled Professor X's mind and got him to send the X-Men to him so he could eat them.
Right.
So who or what is making this choice? And I'd like to suggest that it's not Brubaker that's doing it. I'd like to suggest that it's the M wave itself, that no more mutants wave that's flowing out, all that energy that's been released. Because how else can history be altered so dramatically? It's not just asserting that the memories of the X-Men have been altered, but that our own memories as readers have been altered, that something has reached out of the page and changed our own understanding. Because I read that Giant Size X-Men #1 comic, and Krakoa spoke, But this comic's saying that it didn't, and it's saying that your memory about that event is wrong. Not just Cyclops, but me. And that takes a little bit more than Ed Brubaker. And so this M wave, which is supposed to eliminate mutants, flows out into the universe, and it delegitimizes Professor X, and it attempts to influence the reader directly, and it turns everything inward further, and it makes it so that future stories are just going to be these stories of these bland characters overseen by bureaucratic red tape, waiting to die and just end as a series. This entire book is an attempt by the N-Wave not just to eliminate mutants, but to eliminate the X-Men as a franchise, so that there will truly never be any more mutants. And that's the only way I can see this book as a reasonable product for anyone to read or understand. I don't. I don't. And that's obviously bullshit. that's obviously great. That's obviously grade A bullshit. It's just Ed Brubaker's a fucking idiot. But if you wanted to engage, in a redemptive reading, there's one for you. You can have it. It's bleh.
Hey, we got culture. Yeah, we got culture coming out our ass. All right.
How's this for culture?
Classics Corner.
The Spider-Man 1963, issues 3, 9, 13, and 15.
Yes, 4 issues.
And I hadn't read these either.
So, oh, really? So we both went in totally blind.
I wasn't totally blind, but I'd never read these issues. Okay.
I was totally blind. I'd never read these issues, and I also never really read anything from this era previous to this.
So now you have. How you feel?
I don't know. Is Steve Ditko is responsible for this? Did he write and draw?
No, it's Stan Lee. So the way the Marvel method worked at that time, it was, Stan Lee would I got an idea about an octopus man, and I think this and this should happen. Ditko, make it happen, and then Ditko would draw it, and then Stan Lee would come back and he would do the dialogue based on what he saw on the page. So it's very, very collaborative in that sense.
That's odd. Okay, yeah. I mean, this first issue we did was the Dr. Octopus origin story, right? So
these are all origin stories for classic Spider-Man villains.
Yeah, and the first thing that comes off actually is the writing's kind of elegant. The dialogue and the way people speak is very, very complete. And that's maybe just kind of because it's a product of the time. I expected it to be a lot cornier. I expected it to be a lot cornier, and sillier, but it wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't silly. Obviously everybody's motivations were pretty strange, but and the powers were kind of hokey, but that was all explained as well. Like Doc Ock is ridiculous. No fence or door can stop me.
He's really
an open window is my gateway in or whatever. Anyway, he's got his arms, but he also was also in no uncertain terms discussed that his brain was radiated and he had brain damage.
It was pretty clear.
They were really. So the fact that he was scooting around being an absolute ridiculous moron was fine because that was explained to me. That was the case.
Brain damaged. Yeah, because otherwise I don't know what his goal is. So
his motivation was ludicrous. If that was
he's not. I need to get a hold of this factory and
I'm the most powerful man in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was cool. And he gave Spider-Man his first defeat. Also spanked him.
Yeah, and what's one of the things that I noticed about this was. And we can probably disagree about this, but I was kind of taken back by Peter Parker's. On the one hand, obviously he's not he's not using his powers to the fullest extent. Like, he could probably be making a lot more money. But on the other hand, he still has found a way to monetize Spider-Man, through the taking of the pictures and whatnot. And he seemed a bit more business savvy. Like, he was always down on his luck, but at the same time, he was always looking for the deal, and often finding it. And he was often brash. I need this, and sorry, JJ. And I thought that relationship was a little more. Yeah, there was just a little less subservience than I expected to find, and I was kind of happy to see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is sort of broke and talentless. I mean, in this book, and his aunt is broke, and she's geriatric actually in this version of the story.
Yeah, she's dying.
He needs money, and he's not figuring it out. But he's got his moral code going. We kind of privately spoke about that, but he has like the old classic, right? Power thing from Uncle Ben. With great power comes great responsibility. So he's really honed into his code, but he's kind of found a way to twist it in his own mind, so that he believes what he's doing with J. Jonah is honest. And his acquisition of pictures for Jonah to put in the newspaper and at ransom prices and stuff is sort of fair. And he's I think that's how he's done it in his head.
Yeah, but he's not. But you're right, though. It's not honest. Like those are honest pictures of him.
It's more honest than robbing a bank, I guess, if we were doing a scale system. But
yeah, and you don't really mind because Jonah's. I guess because the newspaper is so anti-Spider-Man.
Well, Jonah's actually like he's literally got a tabloid going, and he's actually a piece of shit. So
he's super piece of shit.
You really don't. It almost makes Peter seem like a good guy, even though because Jonah's also screwing him most of the time on the value of the photos.
Yeah, whenever he can. And I like. Speaking of Jonah, I liked that basically the newspaper operates like the internet in 2019. It's published, this is the case, and you'll get like 50 to 60% of the people immediately believing it. And then you get, like the side discourse or whatever, but I thought it was interesting, the constant interplay of public opinion and story that was going on at this time. It was more, that was another thing I didn't expect to find so much of. But
yeah, it's true, and the fact that Peter was so demoralized by his defeat, he just went back to school and just gave up on life. And you can see people in the media and through the newspaper really just judging the antics of Spider-Man, and it was bizarre. And I think I really disliked it when I was reading it. I'll be honest, but looking back at it, critically, it was a neat story and a neat way to tell it. And then Johnny Storm came to the school and did a Richard Simmons kind of motivational speaker speech.
Yeah,
and kind of snapped Peter out of his gutter.
Yeah, and then he went and then beat up Dr. Octopus. It was a close thing. What do you think of the art? What did you think about Steve Ditko's art?
I hated it. It's horrible.
Yeah, right. What could you put any finger on why, or
it's just not redeemable. The characters are wonky. The way that their actions are, they just kind of jump out. It's very strange, and the just the faces. Anybody who's not a main character seems to come off with a weird gorilla face.
Yeah, people are really ugly.
Everyone except for the main characters. But Peter looks like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And the girls are all kind of pretty and flash, and anybody that's in the story has like a personality and has a unique face, but anyone else just is like this monkey person. Like, it's really
That's true.
kind of goofy and weird. I don't really understand what he's going for, or it's hard to tolerate. But I mean, like, it's also from a certain time, you know.
Well, okay, and I thought that I would. What's interesting about this is that Ditko is making a stylistic choice here, because he was a prolific artist in the at least in the 50s. He used to draw horror comics for EC and science fiction comics, and normally in his earlier work, you have these elaborately rendered backgrounds and these figures that don't look anything like what you see in Spider-Man. Like he chose to draw like this, and I'm not sure if it was because of the deadline. I'm not sure if it was because of the specific collaborative process, but this is a choice that he made to present.
It could be
Spider-Man.
too. Like, I mean, it seems deliberate to make like a hyper focus on lead characters by making everyone else kind of be like little mutant men. I guess that's its own sort of thing, because the main characters really stick out because of that technique, I guess.
Yeah, I guess there's that. And then the action scenes are really, like, every time Spider-Man attacks a bunch of goons, it's like he's just like jumps into the center of them, and it's like a bomb went off and everyone goes flying. And there's no sense of actual, I don't know what I want to combat in that moment. It's pure energy. And I think that frantic energy is what he's attempting to convey. At least in yeah. I came away with a lot of sympathy for this art. I loved the Dr. Octopus explosion. You know, like, he's using the tentacles. He's like, I'm going to radiation mine. And then that flash in the background. Like, there's particular moments that I thought were extremely well rendered and interesting to spend some time with. And then there was the other stuff that was just sort of perfunctory.
Yeah, like, I don't know about that, man. I'm going to suggest to you that he created a lot of this by having a guy in a pervy Spider-Man suit, like, jump off of wooden crates. and just like attack a guy, like, you know, maybe they like did this in a fucking gymnasium somewhere, but it seems like most of the fight scenes look like that.
So it is from a bygone era. Things have changed.
Someone somewhere is sitting around going, "Oh fuck, maybe they got me." You know?
Yeah. He did this for 36 issues.
36 well, yeah. Then they moved straight to who's the next bad guy? Electro.
So yeah, we've got Octopus, Electro, Mysterio, and Kraven, the Hunter. Yeah.
There was also a hyper focus on Peter's concern and care for Aunt May, to the point where he actually swindled J. Jonah too in that second issue with Electro. He sold him fake pictures to make sure Aunt May could get her surgery, and he also was disassociated with school. It was kind of darker than I thought, maybe, you know, than it would be. He told his oh no, that was later there where he told his girlfriend to beat it.
Yeah, that happened a lot though. He's Betty Brant.
Yeah, Betty, poor Betty. He was like interested in Betty too, but Betty, and then Liz kind of came around.
Yeah, and Mary Jane's mentioned this early on, but they never show her. They're not going to show her until...
they teased us. They teased us a little, Mary Jane.
They're going to tease us for 36 issues.
That old Watson's daughter?
Yeah.
Well, I prefer the Liz and Betty love triangle to Mary Jane myself.
Yeah, I don't have any feelings about Mary Jane. I don't really care. I think that's a bad move, but whatever. So the whole thing about Peter and Aunt May, and she needs the surgery or whatever, it's essentially like he doesn't have health insurance. He needs to make money. They're massively in debt. This is not prosperity America. These are people living on the edge. Potentially, he could easily just fall into homelessness.
It's not like a nice story about what's going on. It's like in America, it's not like the American dream. It's a grimier, like a grittier story. That's what I took out of it anyway. He also, there was one other thing. He went to extraordinary lengths to clear Spider-Man's name, even though, like, for me, being anonymous, like having a secret identity is the whole point of it is that it's just a disposable personality. It's somebody that doesn't need to have their name cleared. So I find it weird that he takes such pride in the false character. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Like,
I guess the only thing.
Yeah, if he just laid low, then the fucking Mysterio would flush himself out or whatever. Like, I don't know.
I think J. Jonah Jameson, I guess there's two things that drive him to do that in this instance. One, he gets harassed more as he swings about as Spider-Man, which doesn't necessarily a big deal, but that's probably annoying. And then two, J. Jonah Jameson has a lot to do with that, because it's always like he always stirs the pot. He's always trying to make it worse. I don't know, but I guess you're right, especially with the Mysterio thing. Like, why did he show up at the top of that bridge? There was really no
like,
need
why don't you let this guy just expose himself? And you know what I mean? Like, how often is he going to go and rob stuff as a pretend Spider-Man if he's not just specifically trying to provoke you? Like, lay low, it'll blow over. Who gives a shit if somebody thinks Spider-Man's a crook? He's specifically an anonymous entity, so that you can live your life. Like, it's I don't know.
I guess
that's part of the honor
stop
code,
the crooks.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of his honor code. Like, he doesn't want that to be he wants to, like, strut around and also hear about how Spider-Man's a fucking great hero, which is weird. I don't know. I it's almost like a personality quirk or an obsession,
Yeah, there's a large, and actually that's interesting that you say that, because these books, what kind of jumped out to me was that each of the villains, and I just picked the villains because I wanted some first appearances. I didn't want to get into any of the sort of ongoing story.
Yeah.
And what was interesting and what popped out to me about each of these characters is that they are, in some sense, aspects of Peter's personality, and iterations of, and you kind of already hit on this, like it's all about power, and it's all about the use of power and your relationship with power. So Dr. Octopus, also 8 legs, just like the spider, also born of radiation. So he's made insect-like, and he, he's constantly, I'm in control. I'm the, he's a megalomaniacal crazy man.
Right, but he's also the most powerful, right?
Right, and in that story, Peter's arrogant as hell. Like, in that early, like, I'm going to beat this guy easily. And Dr. Octopus sort of represents the expression of that arrogance. And then through that story and through that confrontation with Dr. Octopus, he learns humility.
Yeah, he's put in his place and realizes that he has to adapt and learn things about himself in order to defeat people that are maybe going to be, like, more powerful than him.
Yeah. And Electro, he's hungry with power. He explicitly states this, and he wants more and more. Mysterio wants to prove himself as really powerful rather than just virtually powerful. And then Kraven, he has stolen power, stolen from a witch doctor of a hidden African tribe.
Correct, drank a potion. Which,
it occurred to me, could that be Wakanda? Did Kraven get his powers from Wakanda? And then just talk about it in a real racist sort of way?
He was actually probably one of the freakier and more capable villains that Spider-Man came across. In this Electro, he literally he hit him with a fire hose.
Yeah, that was really stupid. And it goes to, but like, again, Electro wants Actually, no, I don't know what the point. I guess what you were talking about, how it's interesting that Spider-Man is sort of puffing up his secret identity and worried about it as an alter ego.
Yeah, he wants people to cheer his name. You know, he wants people to know that that's a good guy. That's a guy they can look forward to saving them. That's a guy that works with the cops. That's a good guy, you know. And it's funny too, because even though like technically he should be a horribly hunted down vigilante, but he's not.
Mm-hmm.
He in this like particular like world, he's the police vouch for him. Flash thinks he's innocent.
Yeah, which was interesting.
The Flash consistently vouches for Spider-Man.
Yeah. So that story though, that story where he wants to clear, you know, Mysterio, who's all about illusion, who is secretly weak. You know, the reason he wants to fight Spider-Man is to prove and to puff up his own alter ego. And so just a lot of these stories, I guess what I was, you know, it's a psychodrama. That takes place, you know, you don't want to say it only takes place in Spider-Man's mind, because that doesn't make any sense. But these characters are all sort of
like reflections,
metaphors,
Turtle, yeah,
reflections, yeah. Yeah, I don't know, that kind of popped out to me, but I wouldn't want to press too hard on that, you know, way of viewing it. But I think there's something to it.
Yeah, and I think Peter too, like during the I was thinking during the Mysterio fight, when Mysterio was trying to show that he wasn't fake, that he was powerful. That's when Peter kind of like got broken down a bit more too. You started to see him be tired and poor and angry. You know, lay off, Betty. I don't tell you how to live your life. Like,
yeah, that's true.
God,
yeah.
Peter's never spoken to me like this before, and he was so angry. His dark side started to show. And that's what I kind of didn't expect from those early like incarnations of Spider-Man, that he would show like a dark edge that early. Like an internal like turmoil. Like he just disregarded people at school at certain points. Like
absolutely,
like
yeah, they're making fun of him.
Bullies were making fun of him. He didn't give a shit. I think he already made an example of Flash.
Yeah, in a previous thing, I think he boxes him or something like that.
Yeah, they alluded to that he already beat down the biggest kid in the school, so then he just like trots around with his ego after that, and that's interesting and dark.
Well, yeah, and so like on the one hand, he doesn't give a shit about anyone's. Like I always thought that we would find that he would feel bad about the ridicule, but you know, like you already said, like he doesn't care. He's worried about his aunt dying, and he's worried about fucking supervillains and doing midterms. You know, like he's just running his own program. He's practically autistic.
He's on like autopilot a lot of the time. And he's succeeding in school while this is happening too, which is kind of frightening.
So we like this book a lot more than Deadly Genesis. That's immediately clear.
You know, the weirdest part was I banged these out really quick because I wasn't sure I was going to make our reading cut here, and I ended up with more notes than I had on Deadly Genesis. And I was like, wow. I mean, like this was something. There was like I wasn't picking it up right away, but as I got into it. It just like there were so many layers. I mean, and they were heavy to read. They wrote a lot more because of the way I can see that now in the way that you said that they staged the books with Stan writing after he sees the art. You would then have to take a little more time if you had a story idea, because your art was already kind of spoken for, so you couldn't go back and do that.
And that's the Marvel method. That's
it makes
big
total
difference
sense.
between them.
And then at the end of this book, actually, Peter loses both Liz and Betty, and Aunt May screws him over for his MJ date. He's left degested and beaten, even after he catches and deals with Kraven.
And then actually Kraven's on the boat, and he's like, "I wish I was out there on that boat." And I was like, "That's funny. That's a funny joke."
It was. It had a lot of layers, more than I thought.
There was the fight scene between him and Kraven was pretty good too. Like when he has that paralyzed arm.
Yeah, that was the better fight scene with the magnetic brace. That, like,
Yeah, that's fucking hard.
Leg.
They stole that bit in Captain America: Winter Soldier.
Really?
Yeah, because they put those clamps on Steve while they're in the elevator. That are like their magnetic clamps, and so the whole time he's fighting all those guys in that elevator, he's also fighting against the magnet, the sort of handicap that they've given him. And I kind of thought that maybe that's where they stole that from. Not that you couldn't have thought of it on your own, but such a classic moment.
It was really cool to see, and it was neat that he had to deal with it. And Craven was also like one of the more capable people he fought. It was difficult to beat.
Keep going.
Had actual super strength.
More surprises.
Yeah, big surprise. Huge surprise.
So now let's find out what the future brings.
Oh yeah.
1, comics of the 80s and 90s.
Ooh, number 1, comics of the 80s and 90s, and I have a special treat already chosen here.
Okay.
I would like to look over Wolverine number 1, possibly number 2.
The Miller and Claremont?
Yes.
Okay. I've reread those recently, like a couple days ago.
Oh, that's
Done.
weird. Good.
Let's do it. Well, because you had mentioned anyway. It came up talking about Frank. All right, man. We're gonna look at. Do you have all 4 issues?
No, I think I just have 1. But
okay,
whatever.
There's not a lot to talk about in just the 1. We should do all 4. If
was it 1 through 4?
Yeah, it's just 4 issues.
Okay, that's good. That's a good lot.
Okay. That's good. And then we're also going to be talking about Suicide Squad from 1987, issues 5 through 10.
Beauty.
John Ostrander. Beautiful covers on those books.
Yeah, they're really cool. I noticed when we got access to them.
Okay, but that's the end of it.
Internal thought, yeah.
Internal thought. You can say your if you want.
Now, all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck.